Hey everyone, Jen Shirkus here, and I'm so excited to be back with another video. This one is part of my guest design spot for Newton's Nook this month, and I'm also taking part in their Deck the Halls with Inky Paws Hop. So lots of more fun is going to be posted later this week as well, so stay tuned for that. This time of year, I am always trying to come up with ideas to make holiday cards, but in a quicker fashion. This is for those of you that haven't been Get Cracking with me, Get Cracking on Christmas all year long, and maybe you're just kind of scrambling and you want to make some holiday greetings for your loved ones. Or these cards are perfect for some winter greetings as well. Maybe you're on the ball and you're all done your holiday cards. These cards are great for winter cards as well. So let's get started. I am using Newton's Nook Snowflake Oval stamp set today, and I'm going to be using their coordinating oval frame die set as well later on. And I'm using some Distress Watercolor cardstock. This is my most favorite watercolor cardstock and only watercolor cardstock I ever use. I'm going to be working on the smooth side. And so I'm putting the main snowflake stamp into my MISTI, and I pulled out some Distress Watercolor pencils. And I pulled them from all the three sets. So sorry guys, you need them all. Spoiler alert, or should I say, Janabler alert. So I have a cup of water here and I'm dipping the Distress Watercolor pencil directly into the water. Since these are a woodless watercolor pencil, it will not harm your pencil at all. And that softens the pigments and the pencil so that it makes it easier for you to scribble them directly on the stamp. So I started with peacock feathers, and now you'll see I'm using picked raspberry. And again, um, you can pull any colors, you can do less colors, you could do more colors. I couldn't decide, so I have quite a few different colors here. So, but you could most certainly use less colors if you would like. This is prize ribbon, and you can see I'm kind of working in threes, where each color I'm kind of scribbling a little section three different times around the stamp. This is Villainous Potion, so we're adding a little bit of that. As my pencil is wet, I actually am overlapping the previous color a little bit. This is really fun because the two colors mixed together gives you a new color. So it's going to be really fun to see all the colors come together once this is stamped. This is a little bit of Seedless Preserves. And if you find that your pigment isn't laying down on the stamp nicely, then you just need to dip your pencil into the water some more. This is Faded Jeans. Next, I'm using Shaded Lilac. And I realized I have a little bit more room here, so I'm going to add a little bit more picked raspberry. So now that I have everything laid down onto the stamp, you can kind of see here, I'm going to mist it gently with the Distress sprayer. And I say gently because it doesn't need a lot of water. And this first impression, some of you might think, that's not my style. But what's cool about it is you can get multiple impressions from this one time of laying down the pigment onto the stamp. So you can see I have not used my Distress sprayer again. I'm using the same water. We're on our third impression now. I added a little bit more water. And look at that. So all three of these really look unique and different, and I personally love them all, from the very, very inky to the more subtle. And I'm going to show you a fun technique with the more inky one so that we can see the snowflakes better, so stick with me. But so now I'm just going to use my Ranger heat tool and dry it. I love these puddles of pigment and of color that the Distress watercolor pencils leave behind. So like I mentioned, this one here stamped with a lot of puddles of ink, so you don't see the snowflakes that well. So I'm going to be using some metallic pigment ink. So this is silver from Honeybee Stamps. When I originally put my oval stamp down on my Misty, I didn't realize that I made a bubble in the center of the stamp. So what you saw me do just there is clean off the center of it with my stamp chamois. But look at this, how the snowflakes line right up again with those inky spots left behind from the Distress Watercolor Pencils. I just love it. All right, so now what I wanted to show you is, you're probably thinking, Jen, why do you say these cards are quick and easy to do? So what I'm doing here is I just showed you how to quickly make 3 cards, and now you're going to see how quick the process is to make a stack of cards. Really, I could have kept going and going and going, but I knew I needed to get this video filmed and edited and posted for all of you guys. So you can see here, I'm starting off again. I had cleaned the stamp, so I'm starting off by adding the Distress Watercolor Pencil directly to the stamp. Now, because this is a clear stamp, I recently shared a technique where I did this with some Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous red rubber stamps. The pigment definitely lays down onto a red rubber stamp much better. Because this is a clear stamp, it does take a little bit more scribbling, a little bit more of laying that pigment down, and you're not going to get as precise of an impression as you would with a red rubber stamp. But I think it's still just as fun. And for a background like this, that are snowflakes, that don't have to be perfect, I think it ends up looking really very, very pretty. So I'm going through all the same colors that I used in the first set, and I'm filling in the background of these snowflakes. Again, remembering to overlap between the colors, a fine mist with the Distress Sprayer, and then here's my first impression. So this is the one that looks a little bit more puddly, but we already know we're going to fix that by stamping over it with some metallic ink. And here's the second impression. I did not spray with water for the second impression. And here's my third impression. I always like to see how the third impression looks first, and then I give it a light mist and stamp it again. This is the beauty of using a stamp platform where your stamp is always in place, so that I will be able to go back in and stamp it again. This is the fourth impression, you guys, and I think this one is beautiful as well. And now I'm going to clean, actually I'm not going to clean the stamp, excuse me. I am just adding more pigment. I can kind of see what colors were down before, but you're not going to ruin your pencils or your stamp or anything if you don't lay down the same colors in the same places. And again, I just wanted to show you, so we've already done 7 backgrounds. 7. We did 3 in the beginning before I stamped the metallic ink, and then we've already done 4 more. So loading up the pigment around this snowflake stamp, which, if you guys don't already know, I buy all the snowflakes and all the snowmen. I just love them. I love them so much. I don't like real life snowflakes or real life snowmen, but put them on a stamp and I'm a happy girl. So this is Villainous Potion that I just laid down. I'm adding a little bit of Seedless Preserves, always trying to overlap the 2 colors so that I get a third kind of fun color. I'm going to do a fine mist with my Distress Sprayer, just one fine mist, and then stamp it. And remember, I'm stamping on the smooth side of the Distress Watercolor cardstock. And here's my second impression, no spraying of any water, working with what is still on the stamp. And here is my third impression. I always see if I need any water. This one I didn't. I thought it stamped beautifully as it is. And here's a fourth impression. So this one I'm like, let's just see what we get if we add a little bit more water. And there you go. You can see the snowflakes a lot better with that second impression. So now I'm going to clean up my stamp really well. I'm just spraying water and using my flour sackcloth. You do want to make sure that the stamp doesn't lift up. And now I'm using my stamp chamois just to get in those grooves and make sure that no fibers are left behind from my flour sackcloth. And we have those backgrounds that are a little bit more puddled with color. I love them, but I do want to see the snowflakes a bit more. So I'm just using my Ranger heat tool to dry these, and then we're going to stamp over them again. Okay, so I've got my Misty back here, and I'm going to put my paper back in place. My stamp is already cleaned. I'm using that metallic silver pigment ink from Honeybee Stamps. I do recommend a pigment ink to lay over the Distress Watercolor cardstock and the pencils. You could use silver, gold, white. You can see that problematic little bubble, which was totally my fault in the way I put the stamp down. I could have fixed it, but I kind of was already going to town. So I inked and stamped one of the backgrounds, and here I am about to stamp the second one. And I just think it is so, so pretty. So look at this, you guys. All of these backgrounds are done so quickly, so easily. They all look different, which I love, right? Don't we talk about how all the snowflakes all look different from one another? So why shouldn't a bunch of snowflake backgrounds look different? So now I'm going to use the oval frame dies, and you can see here Jack is saying hello and looking for some snuggles. And I die cut each of the backgrounds out so it has a nice stitching. And I use the scalloped oval and die cut it out of some silver sparkle cardstock. Now, I could have stamped the sentiment in the center of these before I did my die cutting, but I really wasn't thinking, and I honestly was so excited to see them die cut. So what I'm doing is using the negative piece of the die cut and placing the oval back in place just to make it easier to stamp the sentiment. And I'm going to be using VersaFine Onyx Black. Because the oval is curved, it just is harder to have it stay in the Misty and stay straight, especially like here where I want to maybe stamp the sentiment a couple times. So I chose May Your Holidays Be Filled with Sparkle and Shine. And you can see here how fast this process is to get our sentiments down into the center of all of these ovals, using that template to make sure that they're in place. And I was trying to decide if I was going to do any ink blending or ink smushing on the background. And I decided I'm going to keep it simple. This is to get a stack of cards done. I sometimes overcomplicate things. This is a good reminder for all of us, especially this time of year. So I'm adding foam squares to both of the ovals. And I'm going to add the sparkle cardstock to the card base first, which also please take note, I'm adding all of these to card bases. Card bases, you guys. They're really going to be ready to go out in the mail right away. Now with the foam squares behind the stitched oval that is going onto the sparkle cardstock, I like to reinforce that with just a little bit of wet glue. I'm using a Lawn Fawn glue tube on top of that sparkle cardstock. The foam squares would probably be enough, but I really don't like my cards to fall apart once they get to their destination. So I am just using a little bit of foam squares to, a little bit of wet glue on top of the foam squares to just reinforce that adhesive. I just find it kind of soaks into the sparkle cardstock a little bit, and then it will really never go anywhere. So again, this is kind of an assembly method. I'm working on putting all of the scalloped ovals on, then the stitched ovals. And you can see I'm even putting the backing of my foam squares in a little dish. I was being super, super efficient, you guys, with this process. So here is just showing you one more time, adding the foam squares to the scalloped background. The sparkle cardstock is so pretty. This is the Lawn Fawn scalloped oval, and Jack was just not having it. He did not understand. The kitties don't realize that sometimes I'm filming. So he decided to just sit right here and look at me while I finished assembling all of these cards. Does anybody else have this problem when they're crafting? I honestly don't mind. I love that the boys are in the studio with me. So I just worked around him in a much smaller area than I was originally working in. So as I finished up the cards, I did want to keep them simple, but I felt they just needed a little bit more sparkle and shine. So I am using some Trinity Stamps jewels. I store all of my sequins and my jewels in an Elizabeth Ward bead storage container, and that's what you saw on my table. And remember, I always have all the supplies linked in the description of my video, as well as a blog post with more photos of the cards and a full supply list as well. So I decided I was going to use two different colors of gems from Trinity Stamps. I'm using Sparkle Sapphire and Amethyst. And so now I'm just kind of figuring out the placement. And the first one, it'll take me a minute to kind of figure out where I want to put them, how many I want to put, what size I want to put. But once I get this figured out, I'm going to copy it for all the other cards. Super simple. So a little bit of finagling in the beginning will save you time in the end. I love that there's a bunch of different sizes here. And so you can see I've got 2 in the upper corner, 2 on the oval, and 3 in the lower right corner. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Lawn Fawn glue tube, add a little bit of adhesive directly to the card base. And then I'm using the pickup tool from Trinity Stamps, and I'm adding those gems in place where I figured I wanted them to be. Once I place the gem on top of the wet glue, I just let it be. Don't over press it down. That's when kind of glue might ooze out of the sides. Let gravity take its course, let the glue adhere. If any does kind of come out to the sides, which you kind of saw happened with that blue gem, I just use a paper piercer and just rub it away. And so now that I have one card done, I know exactly where I'm going to place my gems on all of these cards. I know what colors, what sizes, and so I just pick them out, place them. Again, Jack wasn't having it. And using my wet glue and my pickup tool, I get them in place fairly quickly. And what you don't see off camera is I have my glue tube resting in a glue tube holder. I actually sell them in my online shop. And because it's resting in there, I don't need to put the cap back on. And the glue is staying settled in the tip of the glue tube. So this makes this process a lot faster and easier as well. You also can see I poured my gems into a couple little trays. One is from Trinity Stamps, the teal one, and then the gold one is from Pink Fresh Studios. This helps me be able to pick out the pieces, which specific gems I want to put out, and then it'll also be helpful for me to funnel them back into the containers that they came in. In full disclosure, I realize this video is sped up. I try to keep my videos in a short time so that it doesn't take up too much of your time to watch the technique and see how the cards came together. But I did want to let you know that I was able to create these 13 cards, lucky 13, in an hour and a half, even with the Jack distractions of him visiting my studio table. So I got about, 13 cards done in an hour and a half with this really fun technique with Distress Watercolor Pencils, a little bit of sparkle cardstock, pigment ink, and gems. I hope that this inspires you. There is still time to create some holiday cards or get a jump start on some holiday cards for next year, or send your friends some winter greetings. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.